I walked straight into the commander's house. The door was blown wide open. Lyra's maid lay in an unmoving, crumpled heap. The mouse stared down at her, standing on her knees. From the stench alone, I knew she was leaning in a pool of blood. Amber also stood, but remained unblinking in a random corner. With one tiny hand outstretched before her, I guessed that, at one point, the girls had stood next to one another. Something had happened to Vera in full view of them both, but only one of them had moved. He stood at the very back by the chairs and picture frames stacked on a mantel. Hands affixed behind his back, Commander Garfield turned, the motion simple, reserved, militaristic. Everything Boss had built up over his lifetime was the exact opposite of what he presented to the world. Simple. But what could be simple about creating a legacy for a new regiment that outperformed all the others? Reserved, but no lion could afford to sit back and let others take what was owed to them. No lion could sit and watch as the world burned when you were there to fix it. Kill the demon. Kill the enemy. Militaristic, but what other regiment depended on their comrades as much as the lions? A pride was not designed to face the world alone. A pride was family and more than family. He'd done that. He'd built us. El, the boss greeted, but there was no warmth in it. I would say I'm surprised, but he shrugged. But it was more a slant of his beard than a roll of his shoulders. I am curious, though. He stepped around one of the rocking chairs and the stool he'd sat on the last time I'd been in this room. Back then, I'd thought his choice of lowering himself so far down was a testament of how aggrieved he was about the king's decree. But now, I couldn't trust any one of my thoughts. Not about this man. When did you figure it out? He asked. Woodenly, Amber's face creaked toward her father, eyes wider than I thought eyes could be. He didn't spare her a single look. I think I got it, I said slowly. Sometime between burying everyone in the dirt and walking through this door. Cheeky, the commander sniped, but a dimple appeared by his chin nonetheless. You have questions? Go ahead. I paused a beat too long for my next words to have any effect at all. What do questions matter when it won't change anything? I can't redo it, so why bother? You know you're gonna die. You were always my biggest threat, he agreed. I made you. Couldn't help it. But I always knew I was creating my potential killer. Didn't stop me, though. You were the perfect kind. So malleable. So loyal. It's not that you don't have a brain of your own. You just choose not to use it. You spared that blue bastard. You told him where I'd be in the formation. You told him about my glare blindness. Boss let out a breath of annoyance, and I hated that something in me wanted to recoil, wanted to snatch my words out of the air and stuff them back inside so he wouldn't have to hear them. It was too hard to see him as my adversary. He killed Rory, yet he was still breathing. Be my lion, he'd said. So fucking pathetic. I am no one's lion. Ask me about what really matters, the commander urged. Aren't you curious about why? Wrecked voice writing phantom slivers in my throat, I replied, not really. No, he arched a brow. Because you don't care? Or because if you learn why, you'll realize even more how deeply you were fooled? There was nothing I could say to that, so I just took it. His words felt like a bedraggled wind slapping at my cheeks. like this foul air choking my lungs with its giant hands. "Let's back up, he offered, a soft murmur that boiled in my gut at its patronizing slant. "I'm listening." Like the useless fool I was, I did exactly as he asked. "I had a lot of time to think on my way here," I said. I wished my voice would give out again, so I could just stab the bastard. But even if my wish was granted, I had a feeling that my hand would still find it hard to unsheath my weapon. It was like my feet were stuck in mud, and the mud had hardened overnight during a surprise frost. "And what did you think about?" Boss prodded me, that dimpled grin spreading to encompass his entire face. Had his smiles always looked like that? "You weren't surprised," I coughed, voice pitching wildly as I fought to keep speaking, "when you walked in on Rory and me." "Oh." Now the mouse was paying attention too. She straddled her dead maid, skirts drenched in blood, but her eyes weren't large like her friend's. It was hard to see them behind her quiet tears. "When you're really surprised, you always get quiet," I said. "But you rambled that day. You stuttered, but you're boss. You don't stutter." "I don't? No?" Commander Garfield tilted his head back, peering down on me with hooded eyes. "So what? What does that have to do with anything? Of course I knew. You are a great many things, my boy, but subtle is not one of them." "You're right," I shrugged. "It doesn't matter, but it adds to the rest." The smile grew again, taking on a maniacal edge that tremored, as if unused to stretching so wide. I ticked off on my fingers. "You lied? No hesitation. So you're a liar." "Everyone lies. I don't." The commander blinked. "You're you. I'm me." I swallowed the words I wanted to say. I wouldn't say them. I wouldn't. My hand flashed to the hilt, sticking up behind my shoulder. Amber gave a great jump. She dashed toward me, gripping my free arm with surprising force. "Don't," she said hysterically. "No fighting. Don't hurt him. Why would you hurt him?" Her eyes were wild, her breath sawing in and then blasting out. "Hey," I looked deep into her eyes. "Do you not see what your dad just did to that woman?" At those words, Amber's eyes, wild eyes, turned skittish. They glanced all about, never once straying over to her friend covered in the maid's blood. "I'm sure she did something really bad," she said, too fast, muttering almost, lost. "He had a reason, a good one." "What reason is there to kill an unarmed person and leave her lying in a pool of blood?" I asked, voice hard. "What reason is there to kill a woman in front of 2 children?" "I'm a lion," she squeaked pitifully, sounding a lot more like her friend than that rude girl filled with so much bravado. "Soldiers are used to bodies." I scoffed. "You are no soldier. You don't even know what else he's done, but you're already trying to explain away that dead woman? You're no lion," I said to her. But I was mostly talking to myself. My voice came out serrated, a sword pointed to my own throat. "You don't deserve the title of lion. You build up delusions and call them your code to live by, but you ignore everything that doesn't fit. That's not what lions do. That's not what lions do." Silence filled the little room as I tried to get myself under control. Amber's gaze felt scorching. I was a monster, standing in her family's kitchen, making a mess of it all. There was nothing but fear in her eyes, but even then, she didn't let me go. Those pieces of Boss I thought I'd seen in Amber, were they pieces of Boss, or were they pieces of me? "I'm done talking," I said roughly, pulling the sword from its sheath. It sang, but its song was twisted now, hollow, like it was missing everything inside of it that gave it substance, that gave it punch. Amber yelled, "No!" and held on even tighter, wrapping both her arms around my body. Her little fingers pressed against painful points on my back, and it had me seeing stars. I walked forward, dragging the royal successor with me, when another voice broke through the air. "Where are my parents?" I turned toward the voice. Mouse.